So the point of RECAP is really to bring evidence forward so that people can make decisions for disaster recovery with some confidence about what's known, about what makes a difference. So often research is done and never reaches the people who need to use it. So really our job is to do the research to find out what helps people in recovery situations, but more importantly, to gather the evidence and bring it forward in a format that people can use. And that's really what RECAP is. One of the interesting things for me working in this field is that we have amazing partners at different agencies who are really experienced with recovery. So Australian Red Cross, Emergency Management Victoria, state government, and so on. But what I've learnt this year really is that when there is a major event, there's a surge in the workforce. And those people coming in to fill in those roles don't necessarily have a background in disaster recovery. So while the organisations have expertise, the new workforce need training and support to build their knowledge and skills. And that's what our materials are aiming to do. Look, recovery is really complex, and because inevitably people have expertise in one area or another, it's really easy to take a siloed approach. But for the people living through a disaster recovery period, every aspect of their lives is affected. So the purpose of RECAP is to really say, look, recognise that all of these things are going on at once. They're all connected. So how can you engage with that without being overwhelmed? So RECAP is short for Recovery Capitals, and it builds on the Community Capitals framework, which says that we all have resources that we can draw on to get through our daily lives. But after a disaster, those things can be disrupted or reduced. So when we think of the recovery capitals, we're talking about social capital, about financial capital, built capital, natural, so the natural environment, cultural capital, human capital. I've probably forgot one, did I say built capital? So there's so much going on, and the purpose of this is to go, okay, what do we know about how these things affect people's well-being and what might make a difference, and to get those discussions going. I met with someone today from one of the communities affected by the Black Summer bushfires, and he said to me he was astounded that when they came together as a community committee to embark on, well, what do we do now? He was astounded there wasn't a booklet that said, this is what you do, because these events have happened before. And I guess that's what we're trying to do with our RECAP booklet, the guide to post-disaster recovery, is just to give some sense of, well, where do we go next? And our hope is that will play out into positive long-term recovery. And look, it's hard to summarise what those things are really briefly, but some of the key points are social connection. Social connection makes a difference. It's complicated, but we are social beings, and so that helps. The natural environment, really important. We are connected, and we can draw on that for our health and well-being. People need a home, a secure home, and that may be within the community or it may be somewhere else. Our research suggests that if you make the decisions that are right for you, your well-being will be about the same regardless of which decision you make. So those are positive options. Obviously, financial recovery is an important element, and there's a complex system to support that, but it's part of the recovery supports that need to be in place. And I guess in some way enabling the community to own the decisions that are made, because every place is different. Even though the experience of disasters has many commonalities, we are unique, and our connection to place is special. So we want it to feel like our place, not like a cookie-cutter town that's just been rebuilt according to a checkbox. One of the misconceptions about recovery is that once the event has passed, everything's fine. And I actually think that the experience of the pandemic, it'll be interesting if people have a bit more insight into the disruption these events can cause, and the fact that while there's a hazard of aspect to it, it's actually how it affects where you live and how it affects your work and how it affects your relationships and all of these other things that have longer term ramifications. There's a pressure to spend money quickly and have everything fixed and sorted and let's move on. But there really needs to be allowance for a gradual recovery and allowing people to recover in their own way. I mean, some people will move really quickly to rebuild the house and then they might fall in a heap after that, whereas others just can't make a decision about anything, let alone rebuilding. But when they do arrive at the point where they're ready to make those decisions, then that will be, rewarding for them. So we have to have some flexibility and some care and compassion, really, in the way services are delivered and made available. You certainly do see different things happening at different times, at different stages after these events. There's a real coming together at the start, just a relief that you've survived and, caring for each other and a lot of altruism. People really step back and go, no, I won't access that service because they're much worse off than I was. But then, everything just becomes so difficult and hard work and frustrating that's when a lot of tensions arise, and it's not unusual to see really extreme emotions and anger and so on, and that can be really difficult for people, and sometimes they step back from the recovery process because they find it hard to deal with the anger and the differences of opinion about matters that sometimes are really trivial and sometimes really important. And so there's that kind of stage that goes on and comparison about who's been able to access what. And how it proceeds from there really depends on the community and how the supports they receive, but also their capacity to engage in some sort of decision making that is accepted as reasonable. With our Beyond Bushfires research, one of the things we were looking at was mental health impacts and the social influences on recovery. And it was really important because it showed that 5 years after the fires, there was still about 20% of the community who were showing and reporting signs of a mental health disorder, and many more who were showing symptoms of trauma that hadn't quite got to that threshold. And so part of our recommendations were that if you are responsible for recovery services and systems after a major disaster, you've got to think of a 5-year plan. It's not enough to come up with something for 6 months. And it doesn't mean that government has to provide all those services, but there needs to be some sort of transition and recognition of that, how it plays out over time. One of the things I find interesting about recovery research is that it's really helpful to identify who might be at risk of poor outcomes, and so where people might need extra support. It's really helpful to identify who has had a positive recovery, I guess, because we might learn from that to benefit others. But those lessons from recovery also tell us what would have been really good to have in place before the event. And so it also helps us with preparedness and building, I guess, what you could call a resilient community. And the nice thing about some of those aspects of what would make a difference is that they also are just really positive in everyday life. So let me give you an example. One of the things we found from our research was that if people belonged to a local community group, that was really protective of mental health and wellbeing outcomes 3-5 years later, as long as they didn't overdo it and end up secretary and president of every committee. But really helpful. And what was really interesting was that it was of benefit to the individual, but if they were in a community where lots of people belong to groups, those benefits started to spill over to other people in that community. And so there's something going on there where there's lots of trust and reciprocity going on in that community just because quite a lot of people are part of a group. That's just gold. Like, what that tells you is you can have that in place before any event happens. If you've got a community where there's lots of local involvement, that community is likely to fare better if something happens. They're also likely to just have a really nice life living in that community. So it's not like you're trying to invest money in something that in 20 years might be useful. It's like, well, let's do something that's great for now and will also protect us if something terrible happens. So I must admit, I get kind of a bit excited when we get a finding like that because it can make a difference. One of the other findings that we've had, and we talk about this in our recap booklet, is the importance of the natural environment. And a lot of people move to rural areas because of that connection to the bush and what they draw from that. And what we learnt was sometimes those people are quite solitary. The last thing they want is to be pulled into a local community group. But they get a huge amount of benefit from their connection to the natural environment. And we learnt that when we were doing interviews with people, and when we've gone back into the data, it's absolutely borne out that actually that connection to the natural environment contributes or is associated with better mental health outcomes on almost every measure. So even though people grieve for the damage to the environment that often accompanies a disaster, they also connect with the recovery of their environment as they are also recovering. And that's a really powerful thing. And so when we're thinking about what can be in place in communities, it's the opportunities to engage with nature is definitely something that's worth investing in.